Succumb to your pride.
So a lot of people recently have been talking about the inconsistency and bricking issues surrounding the Monarch deck. I'd like to analyze this from a purely mathematical standpoint. So I'd like to credit my friend Duncan for coming up with all the maths and using a geometric calculator, which you guys can do yourself. Just Google it and you can play about with the percentages and stuff yourself if you're good with maths. What we find when we look into the maths of Monarchs is that this deck is really inconsistent. So first up, we're going to be looking at the chances of drawing the baby Monarchs. Now, without Upstart, if you play 6 baby Monarchs, that means 3 Idea, 3 IDOS. Before resolving your Pantheism, you're going to be seeing them about 58% of the time. So 42.2% of the time, you will not see a baby Monarch in your opening 5 card hand. If you play 7 baby Monarchs without Upstart, before resolving Pantheism, you won't see them 36% of the time. And without Upstart, opening 0 out of 8 baby Monarchs, that means Rota and 1 for 1. You won't be seeing baby Monarchs 30.6% of the time in your opening 5 card hand before resolving Pantheism. So of course, if your deck is built around going second, these numbers are going to be a bit lower. And of course, resolving Pantheism is going to, depending on how many more baby Monarchs you play, it's going to increase exponentially from about 3% rising to somewhere around 8%. So you can take probably 3 to 8% off, a couple more percent as well if you're going second. So overall, it doesn't look too bad, but those numbers are still pretty huge because you're going to be seeing roughly something around 25% chance of not seeing any baby Monarchs in your opening 6 card hand if you go second, and of course 30% going first. With the Upstart, of course, those numbers are a little bit better, but in a best case scenario before resolving Pantheism, assuming you play 8 baby Monarchs, that means 3 Idea, 3 IDOS, Rota, and 1 for 1, you're still not going to be seeing these cards 27.3% of the time in your opening 5 card hand before resolving Pantheism. Now, it's not all doom and gloom because these cards actually don't need to be played to be able to win. Of course, Idea and IDOS are very powerful. The deck's main power plays come from resolving IDOS and Idea in graveyard, but you're not going to outright lose the game if you don't see any of your baby Monarchs, which is why this section doesn't concern me too much. And this is where we get into the really frightening part of this deck, but we'll be looking at primarily the example of the player who top 16'd ARG and I believe won the 1K event, playing Monarchs of course, and this deck profile is going to be over on House of Champions for you guys to be able to check out, so do have a look at that deck profile. But essentially what I'm going to be taking from his deck profile is that he played 9 big Monarchs, and of course there was a German who got first place at his regionals 250-man event, so a bigger pool sample. That deck profile is on my channel, which I will link as well in the description down below. Both of these players played 9 big Monarchs in the form of 3 Rebus, 3 Aether, and various Fiends. So I'm going to be taking their example as the staple for my discussion and why I feel like this highlights the glaring mathematical problems with the big Monarchs. Now, as you can see on screen, if we take their deck as an example, and they didn't play Upstart Goblins. Now, of course, the German who top won his regional did mention that his deck was designed around going second, so he's obviously going to have slightly better percentages. I'm not sure what the ARG topper decided to go first or second, but if we assume based on a 5 card opening hand before resolving Pantheism, playing 9 tribute summon monsters, these players have 25.8% chance of not seeing a big Monarch in their opening hand. That is absolutely frightening. If you really put this number into perspective, a quarter of your matches are going to be destined to lose before you've even sat down at the table. Now, the reason I say you're going to automatically lose is because Monarchs cannot play without a tribute summon monster. Now, earlier I did mention that the baby Monarchs are okay to not draw because you do not outright lose the game without seeing baby Monarchs. Tribute summon monsters, however, these are fundamental to your deck, and as we also mentioned, there is no formal rota or searchable way to get your big Monarchs unless you already have one, but getting to that one initial big Monarch in the beginning and to begin with, that means without Upstart, these players had a 25.8% chance of not seeing that card. And if we take the maths a little bit further, if you play 10 Tribute Summon monsters before resolving Pantheism in a 5 card opening hand, there's still a 21.6% chance of not seeing a big Monarch. If you play 11 Tribute Summon monsters, that's 18%, and 12 Tribute Summon monsters, that means 14.9% of your hands are going to be unplayable. Now, there's a little side number there. I did calculate this for including Pantheism, so these players, after resolving Pantheism, assuming that they've drawn Pantheism, assuming that Pantheism is live, that's going to alleviate the consistency by about 3%. So as we go higher up the number of Tribute Summon monsters, that is going to grow exponentially. So about 4 to 5% less if you play 10 Tribute Summon monsters, 6 to 7% if you play 11 Tribute Summon monsters, and all the way down exponentially as you play more and more. So the conclusions I draw from this, well, I don't mean this as an offensive remark. I'm just looking at this from a purely mathematical standpoint. I feel that if these percentages are this bad for playing 9 Tribute Summon monsters, I feel like that is a horrendously incorrect number and should be changed. There is no way this deck can be able to compete on a consistent basis with only 9 Tribute Summon monsters. Some solutions I feel would include playing 11 Tribute Summon monsters. I feel like looks to be quite a bit of a nice sweet spot. 25% all the way dropping down to 18% seems to be a really good number, because of course there's going to be odds and chances of opening multiples, which you don't want to do with this deck. If we're just going to look purely at the maths, I feel like the conclusion I would draw is that probably the optimal number of Monarchs that you would want to play is 11. I feel like Upstart is 100% necessary in this deck. And it seems that you want to play at least 7 baby Monarchs based on the percentages. So if anyone wants to take this further, all this requires is a simple geometric calculator, which you can find on Google. So try it out for yourself, and maybe if you want to calculate this for going second, which I feel like the deck should be designed around more than others. I feel like going second with this deck is going to be the most optimal way of trying to get these percentages down and improving the consistency of this deck. So that pretty much wraps up my video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned a thing or two. Most important of all, I want your feedback, so please do let me know what you think the percentage sweet spots are for the number of Tribute Summon monsters, for the number of baby Monarchs. If you have any suggestions for improving the consistency of this deck, which I feel like is this deck's greatest nemesis, then feel free to let me know down in the comment section down below. Other than that, thanks for watching as always, and we'll see you next time.